Hi, I'm Christie Bemis, and I am your host for Authentic AF Conversations with People in the Ignite Your Life classroom with Christie Bemis. And I'm here as a psychotherapist, a sex educator, and a relationship expert. My true passion in life is to guide you to have deeper connections, stronger ways of communicating with each other, and more intimacy in your life. And each of my guest speakers are here because they feel as passionate about their topic to enhance your relationships as I do. So, welcome. Sit back, grab a journal, grab a pen, because this isn't your normal podcast. This is not just a sit and get. This is a classroom to enhance your experience. There'll be journaling prompts, guided experiences, questions to ponder, and more. So, welcome to Authentic AF Conversations. Hi, and welcome to Authentic AF Conversations. I'm Christie Bemis, and I'm really happy and excited to be here with Dr. Mandy. Do you say it Marziaz?
Marzier, the last C is
Marzier. Okay, I love it. Okay. And we're here dropping in on a conversation that I think is so valuable for women around functional health and medicine. And so we're going to learn all kinds of things about functional medicine today. We're going to talk a little bit about libido and the aging process. But I'm really, really excited to have Dr. Mandy here and telling us a little bit about the work that she's doing in the world and how she could maybe even support you as you're listening on things going on in your aging process. I know I have lots of little questions going on already in my head. What I do want to start with is a disclaimer though. Even though I am a licensed psychotherapist and Dr. Mandy is licensed in her field, this is not in replacement. This is educational and information, and it does not replace going to your doctor or a functional medicine doctor and getting your own diagnoses and assessment workup. So, welcome. And hopefully, you have a pen and a journal and you can take lots of notes. And we'll also, towards the end of the show, talk to you a little bit about how you can get a hold of Dr. Mandy and ask any other questions that you want and sign up for a consult with her. So, welcome. Welcome. A little bit about you is you are a functional medicine practitioner. I notice you also do lab testing, which I think is so valuable, important. You're also a health coach and nutrition guidance, and you also offer transformational coaching for high achieving women. One thing I loved on your website is you're not broken, you're just not playing by the rules. So I love that whole concept. And you have a lot of years of experience in chiropractic. So I love how those mesh and go hand in hand. What else have I missed? What else? I know you work with high achieving women who are done being dismissed, and you specialize in burnout, hormone chaos, and chronic symptoms.
yeah. So my background goes way back and starts with biochemistry. I used to be in biomedical research. Then I became a chiropractor. And even as a chiropractor, I specialized in working with high achieving women. And I saw the
Mm,
stress in their spines. And then I saw, how we needed to bring in more things, right? The lifestyle things, not just come lay on my table and get an adjustment. I also find that that's a
yeah.
very disempowering model. I like to empower women to go out and be able to live their
Yeah.
lives and have the knowledge to course correct when, excuse me, when they need to. And and so during the pandemic, I sold my brick and mortar practice and transitioned
Mm,
100% working virtually. So I have clients even internationally now. So that's really exciting because I can expand
yes.
my reach and I just do more of this coaching work, functional medicine work, because it's all interconnected, right?
Yeah.
It's not just the labs, it's not just the supplements. I mean, they're actually a small piece of it. It's the identity, it's the, what are the beliefs that got us here? What else is going on in your life? If we're living in mo the modern world, right? We're just kind of in a world that doesn't allow women to slow down and heal. And we hit this
Mm,
point in midlife when we kind of hit a wall with our bodies and our bodies are going to force us into healing. And that's my story and part of why I do what I do.
I love that because I often say things like, life either will hit you in the head with a feather pillow or a 2x4, and our bodies talk to us and they tell us how we're doing in terms of taking good care of our bodies that are kind of carrying our life's purpose around for us. So when you condense what is functional medicine, there's a lot of things that go on in my head because I had a friend who studied functional medicine and I think ended up being certified in it. But what is it really? What is the essence of functional medicine?
Yeah, so functional medicine is, they call it root cause medicine. So it's really looking at the function of the body and optimizing the systems. And it's very different from Western medicine in that I think functional medicine can address chronic conditions better. So Western medicine is great for acute things. If you break your arm, go to the Western doctor, they're going to help you. That's where they shine. They
Mm.
don't chime with these chronic illnesses, right? Even when we look at like our aging population, the diabetes and all these things, like how many of your relatives or friends are not getting better? They might be on the medications and they're
Mhm.
helping them from getting much worse, but it's not really addressing what those underlying things are. And Western medicine is very good at looking at the body in kind of non-integrated parts, right? If you hurt
Yeah.
your foot, you go to the foot doctor. They rarely like even look at your hips and it's like that, but that's all connected. It might be coming from your
Yeah.
hips. So everything in the body is connected, and that's what functional medicine really looks at. And then I feel like functional medicine can tend to get overly prescriptive anymore, right? Like that's the thing.
Mhm.
There's this thing called green pharmacy where a lot of functional medicine doctors are giving you your $1,000 a month stack of supplements. And are we really getting down to what's really underneath all of this? So now I'm like,
Mhm.
functional medicine needs a new layer, like the root cause, right? Because
Yeah.
in our modern world, like it's not that simple. It's not as simple as, oh, just this one little toxin happened, like maybe you got
Mhm.
exposed to mold, and now you have all these things going on. But why did your body not process that toxin? Because our livers are meant to do that, right? Why was it
Yeah.
not able to handle the burden? Because of all this underlying stuff. So that's kind of the root cause, which is often
Mhm.
stress, trauma, and just our modern life. Like our world is more
Mhm.
polluted. Our food is not as good, like I could do separate
We could go
podcast
on. Yeah.
episodes on
Yeah.
all of that, but
Mhm.
that's kind of a distilled version of what functional
Yeah.
medicine is.
So when you're talking about lab testing, what does that look like for somebody and what kind of labs are you talking about? I know, like, I think in my head, like blood draws and
Yeah,
yeah.
so that's a piece of it. The difference between functional medicine and Western medicine is
Mhm.
functional medicine will look at a more in-depth blood draw panel. I feel like
Mhm.
Western medicine is very much controlled by what the insurance companies will pay for. That's limited. But also, Western doctors, like I don't fault them. They are a product of their training and they are highly trained on
Mhm.
pharmaceutical interventions. So if you can't diagnose it and prescribe a drug for it, there's really no need to look at this test. Whereas in functional medicine, I can look at your fasting insulin and say, okay, you're starting to show signs of blood sugar dysregulation. We can address this now before
Mm.
it turns into prediabetes or diabetes and you're on metformin and other drugs to handle that.
Mhm.
So the blood panel will be more in depth. And then functional medicine, we look at numbers differently. So you might not know this, but when you go into a lab and you get your lab report back, it'll give you a range of what's normal.
Yeah.
But those ranges are set based on the average person that walks into that lab, which is usually sick people, right? So
Mm.
that's not really the metric I want to be measured by. So in functional medicine, we read in more narrow ranges because we're really looking at optimal function of the body. I'm not just
Okay.
interested if you're at the number that they prescribe metformin for your blood sugar. I'm
Yeah.
interested in, are you trending down this pathway? Like, how can we help regulate your blood sugar so you can lose weight and have energy and your anxiety will be better and your libido will be better? Like all of these things. So that's
Mhm.
one piece is the blood work. And then there's lots of other functional medicine labs. There's urine testing, there's saliva testing, there's hair testing. So
Okay.
things that can just give us a more in-depth look at the different
Mhm.
systems of the body and what's going on, which should be brought in, as needed. I'm not really a
Yeah.
functional medicine provider that's like, here's $2,000 worth of testing that you need. We also take a really detailed health history, right? And we look at all these things. I'm like, all right, let's start working on these things. And if you don't improve, then we'll bring in a stool test. Or, a lot of
Mhm.
women, I do the Dutch hormone testing, which is a saliva and urine test to look
Okay.
at hormone metabolites. So it's not just, is your body making the hormones? Is it processing them? Is it processing them down the right pathways so that we're not
Yeah.
going down like there's an estrogen pathway that's not the good one that causes all the cancers and problems. We don't want to detox down that pathway. So it allows us kind of that more in-depth look of the systems in your body.
And so do people like mail in their samples? Do they go to local labs?
Yeah, so for the saliva, hormone, and urine testing, that can all be mailed in from home. Blood testing has to be done in a lab. It has to be drawn by a
Mhm.
by a trained phlebotomist. So, yep.
Yeah. Yeah. Very cool. So, what are you noticing, like in terms of? I work a lot with couples, I work a lot with women. Women are often the first line entry point into the work, and then all of a sudden they're bringing their partner with them. And I work with a lot of midlife women. So, I'm really curious, and I think that's who a lot of my listeners are, is midlife women. I'm curious, what are the typical trends that you're seeing now with your practice?
Yeah, and I also work with a lot of midlife women. I
Okay.
do have some younger. Often they send their adult daughters to me, so I get some
Yeah.
20 and 30-year-olds. But yes, I work primarily with midlife women, and I'm just seeing like midlife women today they are exhausted. They
Hmm.
are like, it's like we hit this age and we just can't lose weight the way we used to lose weight. That's one of the biggest ones. Yeah. My
Yeah.
body's not performing the way it used to. Like that's the
Yeah.
general overview. You might be having trouble remembering things, more brain fog. This is a big one we see in midlife. Like, I just can't digest food the way I used to. Like, all these foods are suddenly reacting that didn't
Okay.
used to react. There's over 100 documented symptoms of menopause now and perimenopause. You can get ringing in the ears to like burning tongue. Like, there's some crazy stuff. Hair growing in places it's never grown before. I mean,
Yeah.
it's just crazy. Lack of libido is a huge one, which I know we'll get into libido, but that is
Yeah. Mhm.
multifaceted. But I really think it's because hormones are a huge buffer, especially estrogen. And once those start to lower,
Mhm.
once all our hormones start to get lower in menopause, we kind of lose this buffer. And living off adrenaline doesn't work anymore. So it's like, I don't
Mm.
think anything shows up in midlife brand new. I think it was always there kind of underneath the surface, but we were able
Mhm.
to mask it better. Just like the weight loss, right? We all
Yeah.
had our hacks for, like I'm a runner. When I wanted to lose weight, I just went and ran more miles and it would fall
Yeah.
off of me. I actually gain weight running more miles now. Like it's
I'm the same. Yep. Yeah. When I was
crazy.
training for a half marathon, I was like, this should be making me lose weight, not gain more weight, and it's just I used to be able to come home in high school and consume, two slices of leftover lasagna and then take a nap and then join my family for like a full on meal dinner. And I was like skinny. My metabolism was off the rail. And now post menopause, and I went into menopause early because I was 35. And it was after I was done breastfeeding my daughter. I had her when I was 33, breastfed her for 2 years, and my period just never came back. And so from that time on, it's just been watching the scale just great. I've kind of plateaued over the last, I think, 5, 8 years of like maybe if I just sustain this, but I've completely had to change how I look at food.
Mhm.
Completely. Yeah. And that's pretty typical of what you see.
Yeah. And you got to look at with weight, food, exercise, stress is a huge one because cortisol will make us gain weight and sleep. Like sleep is the biggest thing. And I'm
That's what
living this.
I'm like a total sleep advocate. I'm like, if
Yep.
there's one thing you want to do for your mental health and you're coming in and you're on all these medications, I'm telling you, none of your medications are working to the full satisfaction if you are not getting good enough sleep. Yeah.
And one night of sleep can like if you take a fasting blood test in the morning and you didn't sleep well that night, your fasting glucose will be higher. That's how quickly it responds. So it's crazy. And high blood sugar causes us to hold on to weight. Like it's all the things.
Yeah. It's really interesting to me because it really is those basics of sleep, nutrition, like how you're getting your food and where you're getting your food from and how you're preparing it and how many times you go out to eat. And then moving your body and water intake. And I remember like laying in bed last night and I'm like, gosh, this week has been really much more difficult than it needs to really be. And I'm going through those four things in my head. How have you been sleeping? Sleep is always like a number one for me. Have you been moving your body? No, probably not as much as I should. How have you been eating? Pretty good. And it was the water intake though. Last night I was like, you've been so cranky and irritable. Drink some water today. So I have my water. Is that pretty typical too of what you see? People just don't think of like the basic things. They're looking for like this complicated puzzle piece of like stuff to put together to feel good.
Yes, I mean, and it's all over, now that we're exposed to the internet and social media, like it's all over out there. All these influencers are saying this biohack or this
Yeah.
supplement or this peptide. And I'm not saying these things don't have their place, but
Mhm.
like the best healers are free. Sleep, rest, sunshine, good food isn't exactly free. Movement can be free. I mean,
Yeah.
it doesn't have to be complicated. It doesn't have to be a gym membership. Even things like CrossFit and HIIT workouts can backfire at this stage of life. So it's,
I find that to be true. Like I
yeah,
need to lift weights and I need some walking and cardio. But
yep.
I canceled my gym membership because I'm like, I don't need that kind of weightlifting right now in my
I built
life.
my home gym in 2020 because I wasn't interested in working out in a mask. So
Yeah.
now
Yeah.
and that's what I tell my clients, like you invest in the weights, they last forever. So
Forever.
it's an
Yeah.
investment up front, but you don't have to worry about having that gym membership.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah. And it's so much more available. Like for me, it's if I'm going to be moving my body, it has to be very, very available to me and not across town or not, like the less barriers possible, the more I'll probably follow through with something. So,
Mhm.
yeah. Yeah. So I have lots of like little questions. One question I have, and you can pass, is 5-HTP. Are you familiar with that?
Mhm.
What are thoughts about that?
Well, it's been shown in the research you probably know this as a therapist, to help with serotonin. So I have had clients that have used it, that were dealing with depression, especially,
Yeah.
we tend to get some of those mood shifts in midlife, depression, anxiety.
Yeah.
Again, I don't think they're ever new. Like my anxiety is worse at this transition point, but I had panic attacks in my 20s, right? They're not panic attacks in
Yeah.
my 50s. It's more like that, just low level ruminating anxiety where, like I
Yeah.
see myself going off the rails, but I can't stop it. But yeah, so
Mhm.
5-HTP can help with that stuff. But again, I always say we can't out supplement our lifestyle. So
Exactly.
we
Yeah.
have to look at the other pieces. Gut health is huge for all of these
Mhm.
neurotransmitters. Serotonin is a neurotransmitter. What is the state of your gut health? And if you've
Right.
never done, like, I think periodically, once in a while, doing a little gut reset isn't going to hurt anybody because
Mm.
foods, even if we're like going to the grocery store and trying to buy the best foods and shopping Whole Foods, like there's still more pesticides sprayed. There's more things that are affecting our gut health, and then it's the state you eat in. So if you're eating rushed, if you're stressed out, if you have to be in the calm part of your nervous system to properly digest and assimilate the nutrients from your food. So you can have the best diet, but if you eat it under stress, it's not going to help you. So we have to do
Yeah.
all those things, and that will help make those neurotransmitters. But sometimes we do need a little help, getting over that hump.
Gotcha. Yeah. Yeah. That's interesting. And so I know we wanted to talk a little bit about libido and the changing libido. And I know a lot of women in midlife, maybe they've been in relationship or married even for a long period of time. So there's a little piece of like the relationship issues that are kind of entering into the scene and some familiarity that doesn't always translate to sexiness. But there's also like the whole aging process. And I love when I'm working with couples and they're struggling with their sex life. A lot of times I start with like the medical piece of things like, have you had a thorough checkup? Have you gone to see your doctor? Have you gone to your functional medicine? So when someone is coming and they're like, I have no sex drive, like I just am not feeling it at all. where do you begin with them?
Right. And like you said, it is multifaceted. So this is kind of the holistic answer. I do agree, sometimes you need to go back to your doctor. In menopause, as estrogen drops, that does make our tissues more thin. So you could be having some thinning in the vaginal tissue that is going to cause pain. Pain during sex is not going to
Mhm.
make you want sex.
Correct.
Um, Also might be time for a trip to the pelvic floor PT. So, I studied pelvic floor work in Oregon, which is where I got my chiropractic degree, and I lived there for several years after. Because in Oregon, chiropractors can do internal pelvic work as part of our scope. So I actually did this work, and even women that have never had children had chronic tightness in their pelvic floor. So there's ways, if you find a good pelvic floor physical therapist, they can help you learn to relax those muscles, and then, like, this is just a reality of midlife. Like, most women never, like, men can just be in the mood, right? And they're just ready to go. And most women needed a little bit of warming up. But I feel like the older we get, the more warming up we need. Because I often hear from my clients, like, how do I just get that spontaneous desire back where I'm just like sitting on the couch and I want to go at it? And I'm like, for most women, it doesn't happen anymore in midlife.
Yeah.
It needs to be slow and progressive. And so, that's the thing to get the juices flowing, so to speak. You're going to
Mhm.
have more of the foreplay and things like that. So it's great that you're working with couples because this can be a conversation between the partners.
Yeah.
And I also think like libido is pleasure. And if we look at like,
Mm.
the current women going through the midlife transition, the menopause transition now are mostly Gen Xers, mostly,
Mhm.
give or take. How many of us have been so disconnected from pleasure for so long?
Yeah.
Like, I have these conversations in my women's masterminds all the time, and it's like, when was the last time I thought about me? You've been raising
Mhm.
kids, we're in the sandwich generation. Maybe you've still got teenagers at home and you're taking care of aging parents. I mean, when was the last time you really thought about yourself? And maybe the last time was in your 20s and you're not
Mhm.
even that person anymore. Like, I can tell you what I enjoyed in my 20s is not what I enjoy in my 50s.
Right.
If we can't access pleasure at all, we're going to have trouble accessing pleasure in the bedroom. So it kind of needs to be this ongoing conversation. And then,
Mhm.
what is the state of your relationship? Again, many of us wake up in midlife and it's like, who is this partner next to me? Like,
Yeah.
I've evolved and changed, they've evolved and changed, but are we still on the same pathway here? And how do
Mhm.
we get to know each other again? And how do we communicate that? And it's really, a challenge for women. I think this is why it's great to have places we can talk to about this and normalize these conversations because I don't know if you felt this way, but I feel like I just woke up in midlife in a different body that I didn't sign up for.
Oh, for sure.
And who
For
wants to be
sure. Yeah.
sexy with that?
Yeah. And I feel like when I went through early menopause in my from 35 to 40, I just remember the excessive like frustration because even anatomy down there, down, my vulva had shifted, my clitoris had shifted, things just didn't line up the same way that they lined up before. And I remember that feeling of frustration for myself of like, I don't think I even know my body anymore. And
Mhm.
that frustration with my partner of why doesn't this work? This used to work to kind of get you off at this point. And it was like this mutual, like back and forth frustration. And really teaching couples to like slow down, understand the aging process, and to age together and grow together. And the woman that you thought you were with is a different woman at this point, and that's okay. Let's grow and explore new territory together. So I love that you talked about spontaneous and receptive. um, what things Emily Nagoski talks a lot about in her book Come As You Are, where women take an assessment around where are my accelerators, what are the things that turn me on, and like my pleasure. I often talk about them as like pleasure portals. Like, what are the things that for me it's like a warm shower or just scheduled sex and anticipating that I'll be like ready for it. Mood lighting, song, music, things like that are like portals into my pleasure. And then she also talks about this inhibition or breaking. Where are breaking systems in functional medicine? You and I had a really great, as we were preparing for this conversation, talk about the amygdala and its forefront activity center for libido, for pleasure. And so how does that factor in the amygdala, and how does that factor in with the aging process in the amygdala?
Yeah, so the amygdala is the part of your brain that's kind of the fear center or the very primitive brain. So, sometimes when we're in that irrational place where we feel like we're acting like a toddler, having a fit, like that's really our emotional center, our amygdala part of our brain. And the prefrontal cortex is the one that comes on later in life and is more your executive function and reasoning. It's multifaceted because as we hit menopause, our amygdala does actually calm down. So when we get to this point in life and we really don't give a crap about what other people think of us, like I've had so many clients tell me, I wish I cared this little in my 30s when I
Yeah.
was so busy, presenting myself for the world. And now I'm in my 50s. I'm like, I don't care. Like, I'm not wearing makeup today because I never wear makeup. Just like, I don't care. Right. But in my
Yeah.
30s, I'd be like, oh, good girl, gotta put makeup on for the podcast. That actually changes, but
Yeah.
it also stress can bring the amygdala back up. It really depends on kind of this interplay of the neurochemistry in your brain. And sex libido really does begin in the brain. So, what's going on in your brain? What's the story? What's the
Mhm.
neurochemicals that are driving that? Like because we get to this point where the masking kind of falls off in midlife, it's really hard to just be like, well, I'm just gonna like forget about all the things my partner does that aggravate me. I mean, I have talked to midlife women that are like, I almost filed for divorce over the way my husband chooses food because I just can't take it anymore. Like,
Yeah.
when you've had that point of snapping in midlife and you're
Yes.
like, why am I so irritable? It's really
Yes,
your
I do.
chemistry changing. Like that's real. And
Yeah.
so if you have all these resentments that you've glazed over in your relationship, of course your brain is not going to be primed for wanting,
Hmm.
sexual relations with that person. So it really needs to be, working with a therapist or a coach and getting your chemistry looked at, making sure,
Yeah.
that your hormones and your neurotransmitters are supported also.
Yeah, and with the amygdala, I often work with women in their 30s and 40s who are, a lot of them are like dripping with kids, and they just are in careers and they're managing everything. And I always talk about the number one sex organ that you have is not in your vulva area, it is in your brain, and it's the amygdala. And so when it's firing and you're stressed out, you can't actually connect with the pleasure signals
Hmm.
that are coming or could be coming from your vulva, from your clitoris, and all the nerve endings that are there. So what I think is interesting is a lot of people associate menopause or midlife or aging with the lack of sex. And what I'm hearing you say is when the amygdala is getting a different set point in our aging years, not our elder years, but our aging years, it has a different set point. I find for myself, and many of the women I work with, we're having better sex than we've ever had before. It might be more planful,
Hmm.
like it's scheduled for me. I'm a 3 to 6 p.m. kind of person. That's where my head is at. Like all of my tasks for the day are done. 3 to 6 is my highest like energy point. After 6, it's going to be an uphill battle for me and for my partner. So there's like this sweet little window of scheduled time that we can have. And so, do you find that too, where women are coming in and though they're frustrated with, I don't have that spontaneity anymore, but I'm pretty sure I can have really good sex if the right things lined up for me.
Yes, I see that a lot. And what I find very interesting, and this is just an experiment I've seen in the clients I work with, myself as I'm close to approaching menopause, is that perimenopause is a lot of hormonal roller coaster, especially
Yes.
with estrogen. Like progesterone kind of falls off early, and that's frustrating because that's our calming hormone. So we lose that. That's our sleep hormone. But estrogen's up and down, and you don't know what she's doing day to day. So you kind of feel like you're on this crazy hormonal roller coaster. It's kind of like reverse puberty. Then
Yeah.
we hit menopause, and all the hormones are just low, and your body has to get used to that. It's kind of like postpartum, right? They drop off a cliff. And I find women right around that transition really get more irritable, almost more irrational. Like they're just kind of everything's up and down in their moods. I find about like 2 years post-menopause is kind of the sweet spot where things start to calm down and women
Mm.
even out and like their relationships are better, their sex life is better, it goes from the crying meltdowns of my clothes don't fit to, I just don't give a crap anymore.
Yeah.
My clients will literally tell me that they're like, I do the best I can. I try to eat healthy and lift my weights and things, but I'm not going to stop ordering pizza every other Friday night. Like
Yeah.
that's something I enjoy, and they're okay with that. Whereas before it was like I gotta control everything. So I
Mhm.
think that leads to like better sex with your partner. And I've got some clients in their 60s that are like, yeah, I just want to wake up every morning and have sex with my partner first thing in the morning. And you're right. It is kind of a different rhythm, right? Our society is
Yeah.
kind of like sex is something that happens at the end of the day. And I'm the same way. In my 50s, like nothing's happening after dinner. I'm done.
No, I don't, I feel bloated. I don't feel good about my body. I want my me time in the evening. I don't want the us time as much as maybe I used to, So yeah, I think communication, talking together, working through like the aging process. And what are your thoughts about? I think a lot of people think I'm going to go in and see a functional medicine. I'll be put on hormone replacement therapy. Like that will increase my libido. And so, what are your thoughts about that trajectory that people just assume this is what I'm feeling? Here's the symptom. Going to go in, get the hormone replacement, then that'll solve that.
So it's another very interesting observational study of mine. So I think there's a place for hormone replacement therapy, but I always tell people hormones are at the top of like the health pyramid. So you still got to be working on the foundations.
Mhm.
Otherwise, it becomes like a honeymoon period with hormones, and then they're not working, and then I have to go get higher doses and higher doses. And, again, you just can't out supplement or out medicate a
Yeah.
lifestyle. But I find like testosterone's a big one. So women will go get testosterone. And I don't always, like, if I'm going to refer to a prescribing provider for hormones, I'm very fussy about who I will refer to. I want to know
Mhm.
that they're doing the right testing and they're monitoring. But I see some doctors that are just like prescribing these high dose testosterone, like pellets are a big one. And their libido goes back to like teenager levels. Like they're like,
That's what
I
I've
just
heard.
want to go to a bar and meet men and, whatever. And but the problem is then, the downsides of too much testosterone is your hair starts falling out and you get acne and your moods and yeah, so there can be like there's not
Yeah, the
always
swing to
upsides
something
without
else.
downsides.
Yeah.
And I find it doesn't always last forever. I'll talk
Mhm.
to them like 6 months to a year later and they're like, yeah, whatever. I'm depressed again. I can't get off the couch, so my libido's not really there. So again, I think it's the underlying things. So
Yeah,
hormones
like
can have their place.
they never took care of the other stuff and they just
Right.
added a hormone to like solve it. Yeah.
Right. And I
Okay.
don't really need the libido of a 16-year-old. Like, I'm not interested in that.
No, I'm not. And there's other things I want to do with my mind and time and yeah. Well, this is fascinating, and I feel like we could have episode after episode together and talk about all kinds of things. Is there anything else that's like coming to the surface for you that you feel is important for listeners to know or to listen to?
Yeah, like I just want to say, exactly what my website says. You're not broken.
Mhm.
Menopause does not have to be this pathological thing that we make it out to be. Like it is an identity shift for sure, but it can be a beautiful transition. And I think, just slowing down and taking the time to figure out like who do I want to be in the second half of my life? How do I want to show up? And who do I have to become to be that person? What kinds of things in my life have to shift for me to be who I ultimately want to be? And it's a beautiful time. And I think it's great that
It is.
all this stuff kind of falls away, like caring what other people think. And the more we just cultivate that ourselves, I think a lot of this other stuff does come back. And it's not a blanket statement. Like, no
Yeah.
shame in having to seek medical help for things.
Mhm.
We've all been there and we've all gotten help from these other sources, but there's also this big, beautiful transformation happening and just embrace that as much as you can. Yes, there's times that you're on the floor crying and I'm there with you, but there's
Mhm.
also times that it's like a flower blossoming, right? It's beautiful.
Yeah. Yeah. I do know I love like who I am at this point at 55. I really like the history I have, the experiences that I've had, and I do have like zero fucks left to give in many ways. And it feels really freeing, to live like that. So if people wanted to get a hold of you and get in touch with you and what services you provide, where would be a good starting point? And what services do you offer out there?
Yep. So like I said, I work virtually, and right now all my services is one-on-one work. I've got
Yep.
some other things in the brain, but they haven't been launched yet.
Mhm.
And we do this combination of everything. So we're doing the transformational coaching, the health coaching, the functional medicine stuff. So we address all of that. And you can find me on my website, which is drmandymarziaz.com, just drmandymarziaz.com, and I'm sure you'll drop the link in the show notes.
I will. Yeah.
I'm also on social media. I'm on Facebook, LinkedIn, and Instagram. And you can find me there. I'm always sharing things and
Mhm.
just really kind of being a thought leader in this space for high performing women, which I think is kind of most of us. So,
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Yeah, I love that you specialize and that's such an important niche because high performing women generally ignore like their bodies, they ignore the signals when they're subtle, and if they can catch things early, they can continue being high performing, or life and the universe will sit you on your butt and
mhm.
the high performing will no longer be happening for at least a while until the recovery is happening. So, I love that.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for joining me today. And thank you all for viewing and for listening today to today's episode. In the show notes, you'll find a link to get a hold of Dr. Mandy Marzia as well. And you can also find me at www.christiebemis.com. And I offer a lot of support and services to couples. I have my Sparks assessment on there, and I invite you to take that with your partner and see where your relationship is at. Thanks for joining.